The Titan-Class warship hovered silently above the planet, its massive form casting a long shadow across the surface below. The crew aboard the ship could feel the weight of the moment. This was humanity's first encounter with an alien species. The air was thick with anticipation, and the crew members exchanged nervous glances. For the first time, they were no longer the dominant force in the galaxy. Today, everything could change. Inside the command center, Captain John Miller stood, at the helm, his eyes fixed on the large screen ahead. The warship's engines glowed faintly, a blue hue cutting through the darkness of space. The hum of the ship's systems was the only sound in the room, almost as if the entire ship was holding its breath. His hands rested on the controls, but his mind was elsewhere, replaying every possible scenario. The alien species had been detected in a distant part of the galaxy, and humanity had made its move. A message had been intercepted, a signal, faint but clear. The council of this alien species was ready to meet humanity. Prepare for the encounter. Miller's voice was calm, but the edge of uncertainty was clear. Yes, Captain, Lieutenant Sarah. Lewis replied from the communications station. She adjusted her headset and scanned the incoming signals. The alien fleet is holding position. They're not moving, Captain. They're waiting for us. The crew remained silent. For years, humanity had lived under the assumption that they were the strongest species in the galaxy. But the information about these aliens had thrown everything into question. Their technology was unknown, and the only thing that was certain was their power dart as the Titan-class warship continued its steady approach towards the alien fleet. Miller could feel the weight of the decision ahead. The crew had trained for moments like this, but no amount of drills could prepare them for the unknown. The first contact would set the stage for everything that followed. Activate the scanning array, Miller ordered. Let's see what we're dealing with. A large display on the wall lit up, showing a detailed image of the alien fleet. The ships were unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Their designs were sleek, elegant, and far more advanced than the human vessels. There were at least 10 ships, each one massive, each one poised and ready for anything. But despite the overwhelming size and power of the fleet, there was no movement, no attack, no communication. They're not responding, Sarah said, her voice laced with confusion. We're within communication range, but the signal is dead. They're not even attempting to hail us. Miller's gaze never wavered from the screen. Something didn't feel right. If they were this advanced, why weren't they making contact? Why were they just sitting there, waiting? The questions gnawed at him, but he had no answers. He had no choice but to proceed. Increase speed to 1/4, he ordered, and get me a direct line to the alien fleet. As the warship's engines rumbled to life, the crew felt a sudden jolt as the ship moved forward. They were closing in, inching toward an unknown destiny. Miller's heart raced, but his exterior remained calm. He knew that this moment could mean everything for humanity. The stakes had never been higher. Captain, Sarah called out, her voice more urgent this time. We're getting something, an encrypted signal. It's coming from one of the alien ships. Patch it through, Miller commanded, his voice steady but tense. He could feel his pulse quicken as the screen flickered and the alien message began to form. The words that appeared were short, but they held a strange weight. Prepare for the reckoning. Miller stared at the screen, his heart skipping a beat. What did it mean? Who were these aliens? And what was their intention? The message sent a chill through the crew. There was no warmth in their words, no hint of diplomacy, just a cold, cryptic warning. Captain, we've received no other communication like this, Sarah said, her voice trembling. It's not what we expected. They've made no attempt at peaceful dialogue. Miller clenched his jaw, trying to maintain his composure. This was the moment that would define humanity's future. The alien council had spoken, but what did they want? Was this a warning, a threat, or something else entirely? Keep scanning, Miller ordered. We need to know what they're capable of. They might not want peace, but we can't assume the worst just yet. A sense of unease settled over the ship, growing stronger with every passing second. The crew, usually so disciplined, now found it hard to mask their fear. They were humanity's strongest defense, but facing something so unknown was different. No one knew how to react. Miller stood up and walked over to the communications station, trying to hide the tension in his movements. The alien fleet remained motionless, but the silence that hung in the air was deafening. The unknown stretched out before them, a vast, dark void full of possibilities. But what lay on the other side? As the Titan-class warship continued its approach, Miller couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. The alien fleet had been waiting for them, but why? Were they preparing for an attack? Or were they testing humanity's resolve? The crew was on edge, their senses heightened. Every movement, every flicker on the screen seemed to take on new meaning. The first encounter was meant to be a moment of diplomacy, of hope for peaceful coexistence. But as the warship neared the alien fleet, it became clear that humanity was not ready for what lay ahead. With a final glance at the silent fleet on the screen, Miller turned to his crew. "Brace yourselves," he said, his voice low. "Whatever happens next, we stand together. Humanity's future is in our hands." The ship moved closer, the tension mounting with every passing second. The alien fleet remained still, and in that silence, something far more terrifying than an enemy began to grow: fear of the unknown. The alien council sat in silence, their collective gaze fixed on the holographic projection of humanity's Titan-Class warship. They had never seen anything like it before. The warship's immense size alone was enough to send shivers down their spines. The council members, once confident and powerful in their own domain, now found themselves uncertain. For the first time they were facing a force they could not fully comprehend. Their home planet, once a symbol of dominance in their sector of the galaxy, felt small in comparison to the warship. The ships of the alien fleet, advanced as they were, suddenly seemed insignificant. They had prepared for contact with unknown species before, but this was different. There was an overwhelming sense of dread hanging in the air, thickening with every second that passed. "I didn't expect this," said the council's leader, his voice low and tinged with fear. His normally composed demeanor had been replaced with an expression of concern. The other council members murmured in agreement, their faces etched with anxiety. They had seen countless advanced technologies, but nothing like this. The humans were not just another race. This warship, its technology, its capabilities, it all spoke of something far beyond their understanding. "They're not responding to our signals," another member said, frustration creeping into his voice. "They're waiting for us to make the first move, but they won't communicate. It's as if they're toying with us." The leader slammed his fist onto the council table, his patience snapping. "This is no game. This is humanity we're dealing with. We cannot underestimate them." He turned his eyes to the projection of the warship, watching as it loomed ever closer, its weapons primed and ready. The decision weighed heavily on him. He had always been one to maintain control, to ensure that every outcome was calculated and precise. But nothing about this situation was predictable. "I suggest we make contact immediately," said a calmer voice, from one of the council's more seasoned members. "This ship could destroy our entire fleet with a single shot. We cannot afford to make a mistake." The leader nodded gravely, but his mind was clouded with doubt. What if their actions provoked humanity into attacking? What if the humans didn't want peace at all? The idea that they might be here to annihilate the alien species had crossed his mind several times, though he quickly pushed it away. Surely humanity wouldn't want to make an enemy of them. They had no reason to. But the longer he stared at the warship, the more unsettling it became. There was an aura of power radiating from the ship, one that couldn't be ignored. The human species might have once been weak in the grand scheme of the galaxy, but now, they stood before them as a formidable force. The council, once the undisputed rulers of their region, now found themselves the prey, the hunted. "Send a message," the leader commanded, his voice firm once again, though his hand trembled slightly as he gestured toward the communications officer. "We must find out their intentions before they decide ours for us." A moment of silence followed as the officer inputted the message, his fingers moving quickly across the console. The council waited in tense anticipation, each second stretching longer than the last. Finally, the message was sent, its encryption designed to protect their communication, just in case. The seconds ticked by. Then, suddenly, the screen flashed. A new message from the human fleet appeared. The council held their collective breath as it was displayed in large, bold letters. "Prepare. Prepare for the reckoning." The silence in the room was suffocating. The council's worst fears seemed to have been realized. The humans were not here to negotiate. They were here to dominate. They were here to prove their strength, and the alien species was just a hurdle in their path. The words on the screen hung there for what felt like an eternity, mocking the council's once unshakable sense of superiority. The leader felt a chill run down his spine. He had seen countless species, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. But this, the audacity of the human message, was unlike anything he had ever witnessed. How could they be so certain, so confident in their victory, when they had barely made contact? This wasn't a mere confrontation. This was an invasion, an undeniable declaration of humanity's place in the universe. "Are they truly this bold?" one of the council members asked, their voice barely a whisper. "They are," replied the leader, his gaze never leaving the screen. "We've made a grave mistake by underestimating them. We thought their technology was primitive, but we were wrong. They've outclassed us in ways we never imagined." The fear was palpable. The council was no longer discussing what to do, but how to survive. They knew that if the humans decided to attack, their fleet had no chance of winning. The advanced technology aboard the Titan-Class warship was far beyond anything the alien species could muster. Their ships, though advanced in their own right, seemed like ancient relics compared to the terrifying might of the human vessel. "We cannot retreat. We must stand our ground," the leader said, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. "But we must be smart. We can't take on their warship. Head on, we must find a way to neutralize their advantage." He turned to his officers. "Prepare for every possible contingency. If it comes to battle, we fight. But we must also prepare for peace, though I fear that may no longer be an option." The council members nodded, knowing deep down that their fate had already been sealed. Humanity was not here for dialogue. They were here for dominance, and they would not leave until they had claimed it. As the Titan-class warship drew nearer, the council's final hope began to fade. The truth was clear. Now the humans had come for one thing, and they were not leaving without it. The Titan-class warship cut through space with terrifying precision, its massive engines leaving a trail of light behind it. Its crew, steady and focused, braced for what was to come, but the silence that enveloped the ship only heightened the tension. Captain John Miller stood at the command center, his eyes fixed on the holographic display, watching as the alien fleet remained in position. There was no sign of aggression, no signs of retreat, only stillness. The crew's collective breath seemed to be held, as though waiting for a sign. Despite their training, this moment was different. They were about to make history. No one could predict how the encounter would unfold. Miller ran his fingers across the control panel, tapping a few commands. The Titan-class warship moved closer to the alien ships, its size dwarfing everything around it. The alien fleet, at least 10 ships, remained motionless in the dark expanse of space. A soft chime broke the silence. It was the communication officer, Sarah Lewis. She looked up, her face pale. "Captain, we've just received a transmission from their lead ship," Sarah said, her voice shaky. "It's encrypted, but we're beginning to decrypt it now." Miller's pulse quickened. "Put it through." As the screen flickered and the garbled alien language shifted to a strange, almost melodic tone, the crew grew tense. The transmission was long, a message that seemed to echo across the silent bridge. Miller could feel the weight of it in his chest. Was this the beginning of a conversation, or was this a prelude to war? Then, with a sudden jolt, the screen cleared. A figure appeared. It wasn't like any human form. The alien figure on the screen was tall, angular, and its skin shimmered faintly as though reflecting light from a far-off star. Its eyes, large and dark, stared directly at Miller. For a moment, the captain froze. There was a coldness in the alien's gaze, a dispassionate, calculating look that made Miller's gut twist. Human. The alien's voice was a deep resonance, but there was an unmistakable command in the tone. "We are the Erics, and we have watched your species grow from the shadows of the galaxy. You are nothing but a fleeting spark in the endless darkness." Miller stood tall, his hand gripping the edge of the console. The crew exchanged uncertain glances. What was this? A warning? A challenge? "We do not fear you," Miller's voice rang out, steady and unwavering. "You are trespassing in humanity's space." The alien leader didn't flinch. "You are not worthy of this space, human. It belongs to those who have earned it through power and time. Your kind is young, untested, and weak." The words struck like a slap, and the silence that followed was suffocating. The alien's arrogance was palpable, and it sent a ripple of anger through Miller. He had faced adversity before, but this was different. It wasn't just an alien species threatening them. It was a species who saw themselves as superior. "We've earned our place in the stars," Miller shot back, "and we're here to stay. So, you can either stand down, or you can face the consequences." The alien's gaze hardened. "The consequences? Your warship may be mighty, but it is nothing compared to the power we command. We have weapons that you could never dream of. We have the ability to destroy entire systems with a flick of our hand." The council members' words came back to Miller's mind. The alien fleet had been a silent threat, lurking in the far reaches of the galaxy. They had been cautious in their movements, studying humanity from a distance. But now, the truth was undeniable. These aliens believed themselves to be untouchable, and their arrogance was now on full display. "We don't want war," Miller replied, his voice cool, despite the storm brewing inside him. But if that's what you're offering, we'll give you the fight of your life. The alien leader's expression remained unchanged. Then prepare, human. Your reckoning has arrived. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the crew in stunned silence. The room felt colder. Miller turned to face his crew. They had just exchanged words with one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and it hadn't gone the way they had hoped. Status report, Miller commanded, his voice cutting through the tension. Lieutenant Sarah Lewis, still staring at the now empty screen, quickly tapped into the system. Captain, the alien fleet is holding position. They've not made any hostile moves, yet. Miller's brow furrowed. Do they have any defensive or offensive capabilities we need to be worried about? Their ships are heavily armored, and based on our scans, their energy levels are off the charts. If they decide to attack, they could wipe us out with ease. The cold truth hit harder than any alien threat. The Titan-Class warship might have been humanity's best, but it was nothing compared to the alien fleet's sheer power. Miller knew that if this encounter escalated into violence, the Titan-class ship alone might not be enough to turn the tide. He took a deep breath, prepare for all contingencies. Lock all weapons, and keep the crew on high alert. We're not making the first move, but we need to be ready for whatever comes next. The tension in the room mounted. Every member of the crew knew that this encounter would change everything. They weren't just defending Earth anymore, they were defending their very place in the galaxy. They were standing face to face with an alien species who saw them as nothing more than a nuisance. And in that silence, the weight of humanity's first true test in space hung heavy in the air. Would they stand their ground, or would the alien forces prove too much to handle? Let's make sure they know we're not backing down, Miller said, his voice firm, signaling the crew to prepare for what could very well be their final moment. The Titan-class warship stood as humanity's last hope. The alien fleet might have believed they had all the power, but Miller wasn't so sure. They had considered humanity's true strength, their will to fight. The eerie silence that followed the alien transmission was shattered only by the faint hum of the Titan-class warship's engines. The crew stood motionless, eyes fixed on the screens, their hearts racing in their chests. The exchange had been swift, brutal, and laced with a sense of impending danger. The alien fleet, still looming in the distance, had issued a threat. But they hadn't made any moves, yet Captain John Miller could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him. Every decision he made now could affect not just the fate of the warship and its crew, but the future of humanity itself. He had prepared for many scenarios, but nothing could have fully prepared him for the cold arrogance of the alien leader. Their words haunted him. Your reckoning has arrived. Miller knew that a fight was inevitable, but he couldn't help but wonder if there was another way. He wasn't one to back down, especially when it came to defending humanity, but this situation felt different. They weren't facing an enemy driven by simple territorial greed or misunderstandings. The aliens seemed to view humanity as an insignificant blip in the galaxy, something that could be extinguished without a second thought. Captain, we've received a priority message from Earth. Sarah Lewis's voice broke through his thoughts, urgent and tense. They're aware of the situation. Command is ordering us to engage if necessary, but they're also suggesting we try diplomacy once more before things escalate further. Miller clenched his jaw. Diplomacy, it seemed like a futile effort at this point. He wasn't sure there was anything that could bridge the gap between the confidence of humanity's Titan-class warship and the cold superiority of the alien fleet. Still, he couldn't ignore the orders from Earth. It was the right thing to do. Even if he had little faith it would work. Send a response, he ordered. We'll make one last attempt, but prepare for battle. If they push, we fight. Sarah quickly typed out a message, encrypting it for the alien fleet. The words were carefully chosen, offering a peaceful resolution, though Miller knew deep down that it might fall on deaf ears. He watched as the message was transmitted, and for a moment, the screen flickered with the cold emptiness of space. It felt like an eternity before a new transmission appeared on the screen. The crew collectively held their breath as the same alien leader appeared, his face cold and unreadable. The alien council was watching, and they weren't going to show mercy. You speak of peace, the leader's voice boomed across the command center, but we have no interest in peace with those who are beneath us. Humanity's time is over before it has even begun. Your species has been given a chance to retreat. Take it, or face the consequences. The words were like a slap, and Miller felt the anger rise within him. These aliens had no intention of peace. Their words were nothing more than an ultimatum, one meant to force humanity into submission. He glanced at his crew, reading the disbelief in their eyes. This was no longer about negotiation. It was about survival. Miller took a deep breath, his resolve hardening. We won't back down. Humanity's place in this galaxy is ours to defend. We will not run. The alien leader remained silent for a moment, and for the first time Miller saw a flicker of something other than confidence in the alien's eyes. Was it doubt? The moment passed quickly, replaced by the cold arrogance that had defined their entire exchange. You have made your choice, the leader said flatly. Now prepare to feel the full extent of our power. Before Miller could respond, the screen went black. A sudden vibration shook the warship, followed by a sharp series of beeps. The crew jumped to their stations as the alert systems blared to life. Captain, Sarah shouted. They're charging weapons. The fleet is moving fast. Miller's mind raced as he processed the data flooding the command center. The alien ships had powered up, their energy readings spiking into the danger zone. They were preparing to fire. The Titan-Class Warship had powerful defenses, but nothing could guarantee their survival against a barrage of energy weapons from an entire fleet. Raise shields, prepare countermeasures. Miller barked, his voice firm. He turned to his weapons officer. Fire as soon as they're within range. The ship's energy shields activated, casting a translucent glow around the Titan warship. Outside, the alien fleet shifted into position, its ships lining up as if preparing for an overwhelming strike. The seconds stretched like hours. Every heartbeat felt like it could be their last. Captain, they're launching something. One of the officers yelled. Missiles, massive ones heading straight for us. Miller's heart skipped a beat. They were here. The battle was about to begin. With no more time for words, he snapped orders. Activate the primary weapons. Fire at will. Let's show them why humanity is not to be underestimated. The Titan-class warships' massive guns roared to life, energy beams shooting out into the void. The alien fleet retaliated almost immediately, their ships unleashing a storm of energy blasts. The collision of power sent shockwaves through space. The two forces locked in a deadly dance. Miller's eyes never left the battle unfolding on the screen. Their first shot had hit an alien ship, causing it to explode in a brilliant flash of light. But the fleet wasn't backing down. The sky was filled with streaks of light as beams of energy collided with the warship's shields, sending tremors through the hull. The ship groaned under the assault, but the shields held firm. All hands, brace for impact, Miller ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. This is it. We're not just fighting for survival, we're fighting to show the galaxy that humanity will not bow to anyone. The Titan-class warship fired again, this time hitting another alien ship square in its center. The explosion was massive, a testament to the warship's raw power. The crew cheered briefly, but they knew better than to get comfortable. This was far from over. The alien fleet was relentless, each ship coordinated and deadly, but humanity was not backing down. This was their moment. This was the battle that would define their place in the stars. And Miller knew that no matter what happened, they would fight to the very last breath. As the battle raged on, one thought ran through Miller's mind: humanity's reckoning had arrived, but they were no longer the ones to fear. The battle raged on, an unrelenting storm of energy blasts and devastating firepower. The Titan-class warship, with its towering structure and unmatched strength, stood firm against the alien fleet's onslaught. Each blast from the alien ships sent shockwaves through the hull, but the human crew was resilient, prepared for anything that might come their way. The ship's shields flickered but held, absorbing the force of the alien weapons. Captain John Miller watched the unfolding chaos. On the command screen, every inch of his being focused on keeping his crew alive. The ship was their home, their lifeline, and he would protect it at all costs. He could feel the strain in the air, the tension hanging thick, as though the entire galaxy was watching. This wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a fight for humanity's place among the stars. Captain Lieutenant Sarah Lewis shouted, her voice strained under the pressure. Their fleet is breaking formation, they're flanking us. Miller's eyes flicked to the tactical map. The alien ships had dispersed, their once coordinated assault turning into an unpredictable barrage. The human warship was now surrounded, with several ships coming from multiple angles, launching salvo after salvo of missiles and energy blasts. The Titan-class warship's weapon systems were working overtime, but the sheer number of alien ships was starting to overwhelm them. Lock on to the lead ship, Miller ordered, his voice unwavering. We take down their leader, and the rest will scatter. The crew worked in unison, the sounds of clattering keys and rapid commands echoing through the command center. The warship's targeting system locked onto the nearest alien vessel with a deafening roar. The Titan-Class warship fired a concentrated energy beam directly at the lead ship. The alien vessel exploded in a violent burst of light, its destruction sending shockwaves through the battlefield. For a split second, the warship's crew felt a surge of triumph, a brief moment of victory in the midst of chaos. But it was short. The remaining alien ships retaliated with even more ferocity, their weapons locking onto the Titan-class warship with a deadly accuracy. "Shields down to 40%, Captain," shouted one of the officers. "We can't keep this up for much longer." Miller's grip tightened on the armrest of his seat. His heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't let the fear show. They couldn't afford to be scared now. The alien fleet was relentless, and they needed a strategy, something to turn the tide in their favor. "Activate the auxiliary engines," Miller barked. "We're going to give them a taste of what humanity can do when we're pushed to the limit." The auxiliary engines flared to life, boosting the Titan-class warship's speed. The ship rocketed forward, narrowly avoiding a series of incoming missiles. The crew was jolted as the warship swerved and banked, taking advantage of its superior maneuverability. The alien ships, however, were not so easily thrown off. They pursued with precision, their guns blazing in the vacuum of space. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Miller shouted. "Full power to forward shields. We're pushing through." As the warship barreled toward the center of the alien fleet, Miller could see the massive scale of the conflict unfold. The battlefield was an orchestra of destruction, each shot a note in a song of war. The Titan-class warship was a symphony of human engineering, a testament to the resolve and strength of the species. But against this kind of alien force, would it be enough? The enemy ships seemed to anticipate every move they made, their weapons tracking the warship with an unnerving precision. Miller's mind raced, searching for any opening, any weakness he could exploit. He couldn't shake the thought that, even with all their might, they were fighting against a species that had been in control for far longer than humanity ever had. The weight of it threatened to crush him, but he couldn't afford to show weakness. A sudden blast rocked the warship, sending the crew tumbling across the room. The lights flickered as the ship groaned under the pressure of the alien weapons. The shields were holding, but just barely. The damage report was flashing across the screens. Multiple systems were down, and repairs were already underway. But they couldn't afford to wait. "Captain," Sarah shouted, her voice frantic, "the alien fleet is preparing for a final assault. They're locking their weapons onto our main reactor." Miller's blood ran cold. The main reactor was the heart of the Titan-class warship. If they hit it, everything would be lost. The warship would be destroyed in seconds, taking the entire crew with it. "Full power to rear shields," Miller commanded. "Get us out of here now." The Titan-class warship surged forward once again, narrowly dodging a devastating blast aimed directly at its reactor. The ship's engines screamed as it sped away from the alien fleet, putting distance between them in an attempt to regroup. Miller's mind was a whirlwind of calculations, but there was no time for hesitation. They needed to make a final stand. "All hands, brace for impact," Miller shouted as another volley of energy blasts barreled toward them. But then, something unexpected happened. A massive energy pulse erupted from the Titan-class warship's rear engines, sending a shockwave through the battlefield. The alien fleet hesitated for a moment, their ships momentarily thrown off course by the intensity of the blast. "Now's our chance," Miller barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. "All forward weapons fire at will." The warship's guns roared once more, the powerful blasts slamming into the nearest alien ship. This time, the alien fleet wasn't prepared for the assault. Their ships faltered, their formations breaking apart as the human warship cut through their defenses. One by one, the alien ships were struck, their shields unable to withstand the barrage. The crew erupted into cheers as the tide of the battle began to turn. The Titan-class warship was now in control, its firepower overwhelming the alien fleet. The remaining ships began to retreat, their arrogance shattered, their confidence destroyed. Humanity had proven itself in the face of unimaginable odds. But Miller knew that this victory was just the beginning. The alien fleet might have been repelled, but the galaxy was vast, and this battle was only the first of many to come. The true test of humanity's resolve was still ahead. Would they be able to defend their place among the stars, or would they fall to the next challenge that arose? As the alien ships retreated into the dark reaches of space, Miller allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. They had fought for their survival, and they had won. But the war for humanity's future had just begun. The Titan-class warship slowly powered down its weapons systems, the sound of cooling engines filling the silent command center. The once violent cacophony of battle was now replaced by an uneasy calm. Captain John Miller stood at the command console, his eyes locked on the holographic display of the battlefield. The alien fleet had retreated, their ships vanishing into the distant stars, leaving only debris and the remnants of their once proud vessels. The crew of the Titan-Class Warship exhaled as one, the tension finally beginning to dissipate. Yet, despite the relief, the weight of what had just occurred still hung heavily in the air. The battle had been intense, the odds had been stacked against them, but humanity had held its ground. For now, at least. Miller allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection, but the reality of the situation began to set in. The war was far from over. The alien fleet, though defeated in this skirmish, would return, and next time they would be better prepared. Humanity had just made an enemy that would not forget. The first encounter with the alien species had been a wake-up call, a reminder that the universe was vast, and humanity was still just a fledgling species, struggling to find its place. Captain, Lieutenant Sarah Lewis's voice cut through the heavy silence. "We're getting a message from Earth." Miller's mind immediately snapped back into focus. Earth had been following the battle closely. The entire planet had been waiting for the outcome, for any sign that humanity would survive its first true test in space. The message from Earth would likely carry more than just congratulations. It would contain new orders, new directives, and most importantly, the decisions that would shape humanity's future. "Patch it through," Miller replied, his voice steady. The screen flickered to life, and the image of a man appeared. General Eleanor Hunt, the military commander of Earth's United Forces. Her expression was unreadable, a mask of calm professionalism that hid the complexity of the emotions she must have been feeling. Behind her, the Earth's flag fluttered gently in the background, a stark contrast to the intense moment. "Captain Miller," General Hunt's voice was clear and authoritative. "Congratulations on surviving the encounter with the alien fleet. However, I'm afraid we have much to discuss. The retreat of the alien ships was only a temporary victory. The Council will return with a vengeance. They've been studying humanity for years, and our defenses, though impressive, are not sufficient to ensure long-term survival." Miller's chest tightened. He had known that this battle was just the beginning, but hearing the truth from General Hunt made the reality sink in deeper. They had won the first round, but the war for humanity's future had only just begun. "We understand," General Miller said, his voice unwavering. "What are the next steps? How do we prepare for their return?" Hunt leaned forward, her gaze intense. "We need to bolster our defenses and expand our influence. The Council's retreat is a temporary one. They will return with reinforcements. We've already begun the process of preparing the fleet for another round of conflict. But Captain, we need you to do something more than just hold your ground. We need you to send a message to the galaxy. Humanity is here to stay." Miller's brow furrowed. "A message, General?" "Yes," Hunt continued, her tone firm. "Humanity must prove that we are not just survivors, but a force to be reckoned with. Your warship is one of the few advanced ships we have, and it's time to use it. You'll lead a campaign of exploration, seek out new allies, and secure human settlements across the galaxy. Our future depends on it." Miller took a deep breath. Considering her words, he knew what it meant. This wasn't just a military campaign, it was a chance for humanity to establish its place in the stars, to forge alliances, and to make its mark on the galaxy. But it was also a gamble. They didn't know what other threats might be lurking out there, and pushing forward without full knowledge of their enemies was a risk. But then again, what choice did they have? Standing still would only make them more vulnerable. "We'll need more than just a fleet, General," Miller said, the wheels turning in his mind. "We'll need intelligence, resources, and support from Earth's allies. If we're going to make a stand, we'll need to be strategic." Hunt nodded. "We'll begin to mobilize additional resources. But understand this, Captain. Time is of the essence. The Council's retreat won't last forever. We've already received reports of their ships regrouping. It's only a matter of time before they launch another offensive. Your mission is critical. Humanity's future depends on it." With that, the transmission ended, and the screen flickered, back to the battlefield's silent void. The crew was still in shock, processing the magnitude of the task ahead. But in the midst of the uncertainty, one thing was clear: humanity had just taken its first step toward securing a future among the stars. The battle had been won, but the real war was just beginning. "Captain," Sarah's voice broke through the silence once more, "we've received new orders. We're to begin preparations for a deep space exploration mission. We'll be heading to the outer reaches of the galaxy, looking for potential allies and uncharted territories." Miller looked up, meeting Sarah's gaze. The tension in the room was palpable. This mission would be unlike anything they had ever undertaken before. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore, they were fighting to carve out a place for humanity in the galaxy. "We'll need to be prepared for anything," Miller said, his voice resolute. "Make the necessary arrangements. Sarah, the future of humanity is in our hands." As the crew began to carry out their orders, Miller remained at the command console, his eyes fixed on the stars. The alien fleet may have retreated, but Miller knew that it was only the beginning of something far greater. Humanity was no longer a mere observer in the galaxy, they were players, and their story was just beginning. The stars outside the warship's windows seemed to shimmer with possibility. The universe was vast, but humanity was ready to make its mark on it, one step at a time. The challenges ahead were unknown, but Miller's resolve had never been stronger. The reckoning was far from over. It was only just beginning. The Titan-Class warship hummed softly as it drifted through the vast expanse of space, leaving behind the ruins of the alien fleet. Captain John Miller stood in the command center, staring out the viewing port, his eyes lost in the endless stretch of stars. The warship's journey had just begun, but the weight of the past battle still clung to him. The victory had been hard fought, but the cost was unknown, and the price of the future was yet to be paid. The crew moved quietly around him, their faces still drawn with the stress of the conflict. The silence felt oppressive, a stark contrast to the chaos that had raged only hours before. Now, as the warship sailed into the unknown, they were all left with one undeniable truth. The galaxy was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. "Captain," Sarah Lewis's voice broke through the quiet, bringing Miller's attention back to the present. "We've just received a transmission. From Earth it's marked as high priority." Miller nodded, stepping over to the communications station. He felt the weight of the mission ahead, but the orders from Earth would shape the next steps. With a final glance at the stars, he turned to face Sarah, his mind already focused on the task at hand. "Patch it through," he said, his voice firm, though there was a faint edge of fatigue beneath it. He wasn't sure how much longer he could keep the pressure at bay. The responsibility on his shoulders was growing heavier by the second. The screen flickered to life, and General Eleanor Hunt's face appeared once again. Her expression was more serious than ever, a stark contrast to the brief congratulations they had received after their victory. There was no time for celebration. "Now, Captain Miller," General Hunt began, her voice as steely as ever. "The Alien Council has regrouped, and we've intercepted several communications suggesting they've already begun making plans for a Their retreat was not a sign of surrender, it was a strategic move to assess humanity's capabilities." Miller's gut twisted. He had expected as much, but hearing it confirmed was another blow. The alien species wasn't just a distant threat. They were a formidable enemy, and they weren't going to back down. Not now, not ever. "What are we facing, General?" Miller asked, his voice a little rougher than he intended. "How long do we have before they launch their next strike?" General Hunt's gaze hardened. "We don't know for sure, but we've identified several alien ships massing at the edge of their territory. They're preparing for a full-scale assault. On Earth itself, Captain, if they manage to reach the homeworld, it could be devastating. Our entire fleet is on high alert, but they will need you and your warship at the forefront." Miller absorbed her words, a deep sense of urgency sinking into him. The warship under his command had already proven its worth, but the idea of defending Earth in a battle of this magnitude was daunting. The homeworld, the birthplace of humanity, he had no intention of letting it fall. "We're ready, General," Miller said, determination hardening in his voice. "We've faced the worst, and we've survived. We won't let them destroy what we've built." A flicker of approval passed across Hunt's face, but it quickly vanished, replaced by the grim reality of the situation. "I don't doubt your resolve, Captain, but you need to understand this is not just about survival anymore. It's about sending a message. Humanity must stand united, and your warship will be the tip of the spear. This battle will decide the fate of our species, and I'm counting on you to lead the charge." With that, the transmission ended, leaving the crew in a heavy silence. The sense of uncertainty and tension that had gripped them since the first alien encounter had only intensified. The war was not just a matter of self-defense anymore. It had become a struggle for the very survival of humanity. But Miller wasn't one to back down from a challenge. He turned toward his crew, the resolve in his eyes now unmistakable. "Have our orders," he said, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. "Our mission is clear. We are humanity's first line of defense, and we will fight for Earth, for every person, every family, every future. We're not just defending our home, we're sending a message to the galaxy that humanity will never be conquered." The crew nodded, their expressions hardening in unison. They had seen what humanity could do when pushed to the edge, and now, they had to prove it again. Miller's hand hovered over the command console, and for a moment, he hesitated. The next step would take them further into the unknown. They weren't just going to face an alien fleet, they were going to enter enemy territory, where every decision could be their last. Yet, despite the overwhelming odds, Miller's heart surged with pride. He trusted his crew, and he trusted humanity's indomitable will to survive. "Prepare the warship for deep space travel," Miller ordered. "We're heading to the front lines. It's time to end this." The crew sprang into action, their movements precise and determined. The Titan-Class warship was ready to move, its engines primed for the journey ahead. Sarah began relaying the necessary commands, her voice steady as she coordinated the crew's efforts. Miller stood at the helm, watching as the stars outside the warship's windows stretched into streaks of light. It was an awe-inspiring sight, but it was also a reminder of how small humanity was in the grand scheme of the universe. The warship was their only defense, their only hope. As the ship prepared to jump into warp, Miller looked out one last time at the stars. The future of humanity was uncertain, but he knew one thing for sure: they weren't going down without a fight. The Alien Council may have underestimated humanity, but that was their mistake. Now, they would see just what humanity was capable of when pushed to the brink. The Titan-class warship roared to life, its engines propelling them forward into the darkness of space. The crew stood united, ready to face whatever came next. The war wasn't over, but for the first time in the long history of humanity, they had a chance to shape their destiny, and they weren't about to let that chance slip away.